Hi guys, welcome back to another snapshot video. We got lots of new content this week again. So we got the new Mangrove Trees, Mangrove Swamp Biome, then we got a new super rare but also very useful item, and we got the clay renewability with mud. But first, let's catch up with something I wanted to desperately show last week, the location where you can find the allays. So last week there was the issue that the allays would either despawn, or if I teleported to a pillager outpost, my game would crash. But this week it works fine, so you can find them in those cages here next to pillager outpost. Let's also try to find a woodland mansion and see if you can find some there. It seems like the woodland mansion is definitely worth it in case you want to get some allays. I found a jail cell room with 4 cells, and each of those cells contains 1 to up to 3 allays. So here we have 2 in there. There's 1. Here we have 3 and another 3 in the last cell, so 9 in total. Let's also check out some of the new content in the snapshot. The new Mangrove Swamp Biome has been added to the game. So the climate in this biome is warm or hot. So it's quite usual you would find another hot biome next to it, like the savanna or desert. Also the frogs that would spawn in this biome are white, like in other hot biomes. Right, let's have a look around. So the dominating side, of course, are the new mangrove trees. Okay, so let's have a look around. At the underside of those mangrove leaves, you can find the propagules. So we've seen a previous snapshot, you can also grow them yourself, bone mealing the leaves. And yeah, those act like the saplings of the mangrove tree. So you can also plant them on dirt, bone meal them. Sometimes it takes a lot of bone meal and grow them into a tree. Alright. Then, yeah, most of the ground in this biome is covered by mud, which is also renewable, which we covered in a previous snapshot already. But another good source of mud, of course, we're just going to this biome and harvest it with a shovel. Then there's some grass that generates in between. Vines will also generate on the side of the trees. And we find some dead bushes in it as well. This is probably a dry biome. There's another orange frog. They're actually supposed to be white. Maybe they actually wandered in from the nearby swamp. Let's see if we can find some white ones. Finally found one. Here we got a white one. It's the color they're supposed to have in this biome. Alright, then it's also maybe an interesting side note here. Under the roof you can often find mud that got converted into a muddy mangrove root block. And currently it seems like those blocks are not renewable, so you can only find them in the original biome. So it's quite usual, the large sections of the mangrove swamp biome are like on dry land, but there's also a lot of water in between. So according to patch notes, we should take our boat and have a nice ride to navigate the muddy mangrove swamp biome, but this seems rather difficult. So here we got a larger area. We could actually make our way through, maybe. I'm not too sure if the boats are really helpful. Over here we also found some bees. So those mangrove trees can also generate with a beehive next to it, similar to the birch and oak trees. So you can also find a lot of bees in this biome. In the flooded sections you can also find a lot of the clay blocks, which is a hint that mud can be converted into clay now. In terms of mob spawning, you get your usual creeper, zombie, skeleton, witch, enderman mob spawning mix, but also slimes. So the mob spawning is identical to a normal swamp biome. The only passive mobs you can spawn in here are the frogs, so you wouldn't get chickens, pigs, etc. I was also curious if the witch huts can generate in a new swamp biome, but it seems like the answer is no. So I teleported around a little bit. Every witch hut that I found was in a classic swamp biome. Also, just a side note, it seems like those witch huts are really rare. So every time I look for one, I had to teleport like 4, 5, 6,000 blocks away. Seems like they're not as common as in previous versions anymore. Next, let's take another quick look at the mangrove tree generation. It seems like the growing conditions are really strict. So you can place down the propagules on grass or dirt blocks, and if you have at least this 5x5 cross shape, you can grow them into a tree, but that seems like that's like the minimum. You would need a ton of bone meal doing it this way. I've grown a tree like this. Usually it takes around 40 to 50, but if you're unlucky, it could easily be hundreds. If you make the area a little bit larger, it usually goes quicker. So we have a 9 wide area. There definitely goes quicker because the roots can spread out this far. So it seems like the roots here on the side, they actually look for dirt blocks to be supported on. So that's why it took so much bone meal here. Also the tree, the 5 wide area is a lot smaller than this one here. growing trees underwater is also a possibility. Like in a previous version, we could grow the oak trees underwater. Also works there now with the final mangrove tree. Completely underwater. So it seems like gravel blocks are also an option to support the roots. I was also trying it actually with mud blocks, but here I had some issues. So you can place the propagule on mud blocks, but no matter how long I would bone mill this would never grow into a tree. So maybe part of the code is not working. I also tried it out here just with normal grass or dirt block. Still wouldn't grow into a tree. I was actually hoping that we could maybe convert the mud blocks into the muddy mangrove roots blocks. So this one here. So I was hoping that if the roots would generate here on the side, and you would have a mud block below already, that this block would be turned into a muddy mangrove root block. That was my hope. It's definitely not the case, because you can't even grow the tree in the first place. So maybe this will be added. I'm really hoping for it. What I can already say, making a tree farm out of this will definitely be a bit more challenging than making a normal oak or birch tree farm. Alright, there's a couple of issues with it. So currently I'm getting ghost blocks of the propagules. At least if I place them by hand. Now I actually use the command block instead. But currently in this snapshot it will be a bit annoying at least. And yeah, the irregular and large shape of the tree also makes it a bit hard. It seems like some of those blocks here above the sapling or the propagule would also block the growth. And we still need to figure out all of that. But I can already say those roots would always grow in the plus shape. That's already a bit helpful. But yeah, we have to see how a farm of this would actually look like. Okay, another tree grew. There's probably some blocks here that somehow block the growth. Is it a root blocks? I could imagine they're causing this. Okay, so a couple of trees now grew on top of each other. Yeah, that's probably what we have to work with. In case, oh, actually a bee nest generated. This makes it even worse. We don't even need a flower next to it. So the bee nest generating is actually a huge issue. Because you can't push those blocks away. They're tile entities. This is actually, yeah, this is getting tricky. So I would have said if everything else fails, we could always make a flying machine and just push out the logs and blow it up somewhere else. But if we have a bee nest generating, nope, the flying machine would get stuck on it. So it seems like currently the only way to farm this tree would be to blow it up directly on site, not move it anywhere. So I actually asked Sky to check the code, what's going on here. And here we already have an indicator. So I'm holding a propagule. And yeah, check it out. The bee is following me. Why would it do that? Well, because the propagule actually is like a flower. So what's happening is the propagule sapling is basically the flower. And so therefore, yeah, we meet the conditions of having a flower next to the tree that grows. Next to it is actually the tree that grows. So there's basically no way to avoid the beehive generation. That's definitely an interesting one. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be a quite challenge to make a farm out of this. Maybe this will also get changed. Who knows? Okay, let's move on from the mangrove trees to the renewable clay. So the conditions for this are rather simple. So you just need some pointed dripstone hanging from really any block and then the mud block on top. I turned the random tick speed off for a moment, but as soon as I would turn it to the default value of 3, you would start the clay or the mud to clay conversion. So yeah, it looks like this goes rather quick, and it's definitely the case. I asked Sky again to check the code. And it's actually tied to the pointed dripstone. So if you have a cauldron below the pointed dripstone, it has a 17.2% chance to fill the cauldron if the dripstone gets random ticked. And this is directly tied to the mud drying as well. So random ticks happen per block on average every around 69 seconds. If you take the 17.2% chance, it takes on average 6.5 minutes to convert a mud block into a clay block. Of course, after 6.5 minutes, not all of those will have been converted to clay. Probably will take an hour, a bit longer even, until every last single one of those has been converted. But on average, it would be 6.5 minutes. So as we talked about it in a previous video already, you can get renewable clay now basically just from scratch. So you can get clay in a skyblock world, but of course every other world as well, as long as you have a stone generator, some bone meal, and moss. So you can generate stone, turn it into moss. Yeah, bone meal the moss to get one of those azalea saplings on top, bone meal that, then the moss will be turned into the rooted dirt, which can be converted into mud and then into clay, and then you can put all of this into a blast chamber and blow it up. So all the steps until mud would actually work without the player being nearby, but the the mud to clay conversion of course requires a player because it's random tick based. So you need a player within roughly 128 blocks for this to happen. So you couldn't just set this up in the spawn chunks, leave the area and wait for it to be converted. No, you would need to stand at least close to it. So with all the new features we're getting in 1.19, there's quite some impressive automation you can do if you also involve the player. So you can generate everything up to the clay here, and if you push this towards the player, you could now mine the clay with a silk touch shovel and get the clay blocks directly, which you can put in a furnace and turn into terracotta. And of course you could use the new sculk mechanics to get some XP to repair your mending shovel, for example. This will be like 6 or 7 farms in one. And then unfortunately you need to combine the terracotta with some dye in case you want to make some colored terracotta, which you can smelt into glazed terracotta. Alright, there's one more thing we need to talk about. What is this interesting looking item? So this is called a recovery compass, and it's quite useful. So I guess we've all been in the situation before that we died at some point and we didn't press F3 and already respawned and just didn't know where we died at. Couldn't find the coordinates at all or the location. Maybe it was in the nether, everything looks the same, and we just couldn't find our stuff anymore. And yeah, here the recovery compass is the perfect solution for that because it points towards the direction you last died at. Alright, let's try it out real quick, but first let's talk about what's happening here right now. Why does the needle spin around? So there's 2 reasons for this. Either you haven't died yet, then it does this. Obviously the item wouldn't be very helpful in hardcore mode, or your death's location is a different dimension than you and your compass are. Okay, let's just die over here real quick. And now, if we take the compass, it points towards the location where we died. Okay, obviously, if the compass is not held by a player, it's not bound to any player, it would just spin around in an item frame. Also, if I give my compass to somebody else, it would point towards the other person's death location instead if he's holding that item. So it's not bound to a player. Okay, so let's fly around. Yep, would always point towards the location where we died. Very helpful. Here you can see the crafting recipes. You need 1 compass surrounded by 8 so-called echo shards. They look a little bit like ender pearls. Now it's just a question where I can get those from. And the answer is at the ancient cities. So Mojang added another incentive to go to the ancient city. You can find them randomly in those loot chests you can find scattered around. Okay, so there's 1 echo shard in this chest here. Let's maybe have a flight around and try to look for more chests. See how many you can get. Another 2 in there. None in there, so we got 3 so far. Might not even be enough to just loot a single ancient city. You might need to go to several. But so far we only got 3 and we need 8. Okay, this one doesn't contain any again. Yep, no echo shards. With more luck over here. Nope, a lot of books. So this definitely will be a quite rare and sought after item. So technically if you play in a server and you're all friends with each other, it might be enough to just only have 1 or 2 of those, and you could share those whenever you actually need them, because let's be honest, it doesn't really happen too often that you all of a sudden die and couldn't find anymore where you died at. Then this is exactly what you would need. But of course, if you don't cooperate, then everyone will probably want to have one of those things in his ender chest. Yep. So 4 echo shards so far. Might not be enough to find one of those ancient cities. And of course, as always with items that are bound to some exploration content but are very useful, there's probably going to be the dilemma that on servers there won't be enough of those. In single player it's perfectly fine, but probably on a busy server you need to go out 50,000 blocks to find your ancient city that hasn't been raided yet to get your recovery compass as well, because all the other ones have been raided by the other players already. There's always a little bit of a dilemma with this type of content. It is bound to some exploration. It also blows up the world file size for a lot of servers, which sometimes can be an issue. The other alternative is making renewable, but then yeah, it's usually easy to make a farm, and one player can supply the whole server with those items. Yeah, it's a bit of a dilemma. Alright, that's all for today. Thanks guys for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye!